I used to spend a lot of time scouting, driving from ranch to ranch, walking lots of blocks, looking for all kinds of things. And even with all that scouting, I was rarely the person to first encounter a pest or disease. Usually
Hmm.
it was someone who was doing the work of training or pruning or something like that who would say, "Hey, what's this?" They may
Hmm.
not even know what it is, but having your whole team
Hmm.
with an eye toward abnormality,
Hmm.
with an eye towards something atypical. Hey, this plant doesn't look right. Oh,
Hmm.
right? Because whether you're whoever has their hands on the plants the most needs to have a mindset of looking for things that seem out of place. And that
Hmm.
is a huge key to success. And that's how we've caught many, many disease outbreaks or pest outbreaks early stage, because the people who were in the plants were the ones who would raise the alarm.
Hello there. Welcome to CNG Field Notes. This podcast is rooted in the spirit of our certification's peer review inspections. Our goal is to capture that farmer to farmer knowledge exchange we see happening at the local level and share it across our CNG community and beyond. I'm your host, Erin Torgerson, CNG's certification specialist and programs coordinator. Today's episode is all about pest and disease management, specifically for produce and flower growers. And we're joined by not one, but two incredible members of the Seven Spring Farm Supply team, Alena Ivakneko and Daniel Sweeney. For those who aren't familiar with Seven Spring, they are based in Southwest Virginia, and for more than 30 years, they have been a trusted resource for sustainable and organic minded farmers across North America. They provide high quality soil amendments, crop protection products, fertilizers, cover crop seeds, and farm supply, along practical experience based guidance. Alena is Seven Springs marketing specialist and owns and operates Star City Stems, a flower farm in Roanoke, Virginia. And Daniel Sweeney is Seven Springs senior crop advisor, building on 15 plus years of experience working on vineyards, nurseries, and orchards across the U.S. This is a jumbo topic that we're going to tackle in this episode, but we're going to take it from kind of a zoomed out view, thinking about how to manage pests and disease in your garden through planning, observation, and really identifying folks in your community who can help you navigate these challenges season after season. So, without further ado, let's jump into our conversation with Alena and Daniel. Okay, we are here with Daniel and Alena from Seven Spring Farm Supply, and we're going to start off like we always do by getting into the origin stories of how you arrived at this work. So we'll start with Alena. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got to Seven Spring, but also your journey as a farmer?
Yeah, of course. So I started working outdoors a lot in my 20s. I did some work for the Forest Service and the Park Service out west, and then over time I got really interested in growing. My grandmother grew when I was a child, and so I spent a lot of time in her garden. And so it definitely interested me. And so I made my way out east, and I worked on a couple of different vegetable farms in Georgia and North Carolina, and definitely loved it, learned a lot. And then over time, I was like, I want to start my own, obviously, as everybody I feel like does. And so I had met Matthew Cantrell. He's one of our coworkers. I met him in Georgia because we worked on the same farm, and I knew that he had moved up to Southwest Virginia. And so
Mhm.
I went to visit him one time, absolutely fell in love with the area, and decided to move up there. There's a really big farming community in Floyd and Czech, where we're based out of. And so I was like, this might be the perfect spot. And luckily, I was able to get in with Seven Springs, and I started in their warehouse. I was packing mail order boxes, and I began a flower farm with a partner, and we grew for about 2 years. And
Mhm.
we started right when COVID began.
Mhm.
So we were right in that boom. There were a lot of flower growers, I think, that started around that same time,
Mhm.
which was really interesting. It brought a lot of joy to people during a pretty dark time. Um, and it was incredible. We learned a lot. We definitely worked a crazy amount and experienced some farmer burnout. I feel like that's also on par with a lot of growers. And so I decided to take a little bit of break from farming, and I moved over to Roanoke, just a little ways away. And this last year, I have a house that has about an acre of property attached to it, and I decided to try my hand again at farming. Um, and me and one of my close friends, she also works in the flower industry. She's farmed for the last couple of years and runs the Blue Ridge Flower Collective here in Roanoke, which is a collective of flower growers in the area that get to like wholesale their flowers, basically. And so her and I started dreaming up a plan, and we began Star City Stems this year. We're really small. We're pretty intentional. Both of us have full-time jobs. Um, but we're going for kind of our community and kind of for the love of flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has been really enjoyable, especially to do it at a slightly smaller scale than I was before, to like keep it sustainable for me and for Nisretta as well. So that's been incredible. So yeah, first year farming again.
Which
Yeah.
always feels truly like the first time.
Yes,
Yeah.
literally learning a lot, especially with this land, because before it was just lawn. So I'm learning a lot about, I got a soil test report. I sent it to Daniel, our crop advisor. He helped me come up with some soil nutrients to put back in. We've been doing cover cropping. It's been really cool to do it all again.
That's awesome. Well, I
Yeah.
should also start by saying that we all have met at conferences, which is a great place to rub elbows with like-minded folks. But being behind the table now, instead of just an attendee, and talking with people like yourselves, it was inspiring to me as a farmer to be like, okay, most of these people are also, I've got a little something going on the side, which I think just like makes the work that you all do like so much richer and like puts, you're putting your sweat and tears into it and you're relating on a very personal level. So thanks for sharing all that. And we'll head over to
Yeah.
Daniel for how'd you get into the
So,
work with Seven Springs?
I mean, the short version is, so I have an agricultural background. I started in the wine industry and was in wine production for a little over a decade. Got into vineyards as a natural consequence of wine work and wanting to know all facets of that industry. And then from vineyards, moved into vineyard management, orchard management, and then had an opportunity. I was out west, had an opportunity to come back to Floyd, which is where my family has been for a while. And
Mm.
in that transition, I started running a vegetable farm, a local organic vegetable farm. And then coming from the world of perennials to annual vegetable production is a shock to the system, especially if you haven't done it before. So, soil things, pest and disease stuff is one thing, but in the world of perennials, you kind of know the plants and you know the patterns and you know the weather in a different way. You're anticipating a lot, and not that you're not anticipating in vegetable production, but you have to multiply that mindset by every single crop and every single succession. And so I quickly burned out and talked to Eric over at Seven Springs. He's our CEO, and said, "All right, man." Um, I vividly remember being in a high tunnel in the winter, picking kale and lettuce, and thinking this is unsustainable for me.
Mhm.
And so connected with Eric and said, "I'm ready when you are." And so then pretty quickly thereafter moved over to Seven Springs and been there a little over 8 years.
Awesome.
And the company has grown a lot in that time, um, mostly due to Eric putting together a team and maintaining that team. You mentioned before we got on the call of just like being multifaceted. Everybody's busy, and that's really describes everyone that works at Seven Springs. Is we've all got a lot of irons in the fire. We've all got varied experiences, and Eric is really good at playing to each individual's strengths and cultivating a small dedicated team. And so yeah, 8 years later, I'm still there, Matt's still there, Alena's still there, and we have a lot of tenure now, and it's a pretty amazing thing to be a part of. So that's how I got to Seven Springs. Yeah,
Yeah. I think if you both want to like describe what your role specifically is at Seven Spring, that'd be great. So go to Elena.
Yeah. So I started out in mail order, like I mentioned,
Hmm.
and I was packing boxes. It was great. And then I kind of moved into being a little bit more in charge up there with the mail order. And then during that time, I had started the first flower business
Hmm.
with another person, and I built our website, I did our social media, and I had kind of done like the marketing for it. And I think Eric again was like, huh? Huh? You do marketing? Eh? And so over time, I've now become the marketing specialist. So I'm in charge of a lot of like the photography, the content for social media, some of the back end for our website, as well as any of the advertising or displays that you see at conferences, basically all of our forward facing media I'm kind of in charge of, as well as the catalog. We all kind of work on it as a team, but I'm in charge of layout and all of that for it as well. But yeah, I've been there, I think this is going into my 8th year. Same. So like 7 years going into eighth. So
Yeah,
yeah, we've all been there a bit. It's great.
that's awesome. That speaks highly of the company for sure. And Daniel, what's your role?
Yeah, so I started out as the bookkeeper because that was the open position to get me in the door. I'd never done bookkeeping before. I had done plenty of tracking of things, so I had some familiarity with software, but uh, from bookkeeping went into kind of helping to refine our IT setup and our network setup. Also, didn't really have any experience in that before, but um, so since day one, I've just sort of done what the business has needed. The role that I've grown into has been my title is senior crop advisor. Basically, I function as the technical resource for the business and for our clients. Um, if we are discussing products, um, I'll review them, bringing new products in. If we're putting products on the website, I'll write the description, or in the catalog, I'll write the description. Um, I work closely with Alena often, just with any kind of writing, any kind of messaging that goes out, um, making sure that it sticks to be technically accurate, to be
Hmm.
trustworthy, reliable, and also align with our values and mission.
Yeah.
Uh, but
So if
we
people
all do
call in
everything.
and like have questions
Yeah,
about, yeah, like you said, setting in like soil tests and things like that. You
that's
work
right.
with
So with
them.
the farmers, I make site visits when I'm well enough to travel.
Hmm.
I've been nursing a back injury since I
Hmm.
saw you, so I've been out of the field this
Hmm.
spring and recovering. But yes, traveling to farms, doing field days,
Hmm.
things like that, and then looking at soil reports, coming up with fertility plans, looking at um, pest and disease management, farm by farm, case by case, as people call or email. And I have relationships with quite a few farms at this point of just
Hmm.
people I've been working closely with, good clients of ours, for many years now. And it's, yeah, that's what I do at Seven Springs. It's sort of whatever the business needs.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think both of you mentioned farmer burnout, and I think that's a good place to start because this is the month when it happens.
Yeah.
I think this is definitely the month where it is very hot, kind of peak of disease, pest pressure, and yeah, the August and July are the months where the farmers are like, why do I do this? And so today we want to talk about pest and disease management, which is a monstrous topic. And I love that picture you put in, Daniel, of like when you're managing an annual operation, whether that be vegetables or flowers, there's just so much going on, so many varieties, so many plants that have their own diseases and pests, and it just feels really overwhelming. But it is an issue on both sides that if you don't tackle, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So um, we're going to try to kind of get through as much as we can, kind of talking about like before there's even a pest or disease, what can we do? How do we plan? How do we scout? How do we assess? And how do we treat? And yeah, very excited to have both of your backgrounds as farmers to kind of lead us forward here. So um, when you walk on to a farm that's like consistently producing healthy crops, what are you noticing around?
Usually someone's paying close attention.
Mm-hmm.
They've got their systems in place. Typically, when you see good success, it's because they've got a lot of experience and they've simplified things, and they're playing to their strengths,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they know what to anticipate.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's rare to walk onto a farm that's looking perfect and it's just like happened that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's intentionality, and that's all encompassing. So from their crop plan to the execution, from lining up their seed ordering, being timely with their fertilization, timely with everything, is just like having good systems in place produces good results.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes that comes with longevity and also experienced management, whether it's the farmer, whether it's the crew, the people who are hands-on are experienced. That gives you just a huge leg up. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So that's the first thing I noticed is like it's never by accident that you have things looking really good on a farm.
Yeah.
Not for long, anyways.
Hard earned, hard earned.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you from a flower perspective when you see a beautiful flower farm? What are you noticing first?
Um, I think I think a lot of at least what I've seen or kind of try and focus on is the varieties of flowers that folks are growing,
Mm-hmm.
um, and why and how much of them they're growing. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
that's also intentional, kind of with what Daniel was saying. Like with, I feel like there's a lot of different varieties that are beautiful, but don't have a great base life or get a lot of pest pressure or a variety of other issues. And I think looking around, I've seen more and more like intentional, like we actually don't grow this anymore because it is either too much of an issue or it doesn't, it takes too much time to harvest, too much aftercare, things like that. Um, I think that's one of the things that I noticed. And I think too, with like pests and whatnot, also being aware of, okay, like dahlias, right? Like dahlias, everybody loves them, but they are so labor intensive to prevent from pests. And so kind of noticing the ways that farmers either like trellis them or where they plant them or if they're using bags to protect them, things like that. I think looking at the small things the growers are kind of adding as protections,
Mm-hmm.
I always notice those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Starting with like that planning idea, how much do you think goes into thinking about pest and disease, like starting from variety selections, or are there questions that folks should be like asking seed suppliers and things like that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you'll see a lot of seeds, or if you look in production guides, you'll see varieties that are resistant to key pests or diseases. So knowing the key pests and diseases and their typical life cycles is important in genetic selection of whatever crop you're growing. So
Mm-hmm.
why do people use grafted tomatoes? Well, because there are diseases that in the soil that impact the ability for those tomatoes to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Why do people select X, Y, or Z cucurbit? Because, well, maybe it's downy mildew resistant, right? So the seed companies are breeding for resistance to key pests. The job of the farmer in that situation is to know which key pests are prevalent in their area. Pests. I use the term pest broadly to include diseases.
Mm-hmm.
So pest and disease
Yeah.
resistant varieties is really important, and um, thankfully we have seed companies that are on top of that, and they're happy to answer those questions because that's sort of what they're producing is not just cucumbers, but cucumbers to help you have a successful crop because they're disease resistant, they're pest resistant, they're also hopefully yielding well and they taste good, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. So really combing through the catalogs and I would say even going as far as like you could call like just as people can call
Yeah,
you for help, like you can
Mm-hmm.
call folks at Johnny's and High Mowing Seeds to direct you like they're people that's their whole job.
That's right. Yeah, they
Hmm.
are happy to answer questions about seeds because that's their business, and they
Hmm.
should be passionate about those things and ready to tell you all about the new seeds that they have or the long standing you know excellent varieties that they have. So
Yeah.
we've gotten, just like you've been to conferences and had a chance to talk to people. We talk a lot with the seed folks. We're not in any competition with them, so
Hmm.
it's easy for us to be very good friends with them. We get together at these conferences and spend time together, and there's so many parallels between what the seed companies do and what we do as far as how we interact with the farmer, and it's great to see that their goals are always to help the farmer succeed, and that's exactly what they're doing with their breeding programs. So they're going to be happy to talk to you about it if you call them and say, "I'm looking to plant an acre of whatever."
Hmm.
They want to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have anything to add from the flower perspective?
I feel like Daniel covered it pretty well. Yeah. Yeah, I think with flowers, and I could be completely wrong, but there is less specific breeding for
Mm.
disease and whatnot. Like vegetables definitely has a lot of those. Like it's marked very clearly. And I do think that some of the like seed manufacturers for flowers are starting to focus more on that, like disease and disease resistance specifically. But it is a little bit more rare, I think. And so there's definitely room to grow in that. But
Yeah. Well, one thing that I think comes up a lot for our for CNG members or certified organic farmers is you're required to source organic seed whenever possible, or whether it's commercially available. And obviously, it's more costly, and sometimes it is hard to find, certain varieties that are available at the scale you need them at. But can you talk a little bit about why it's important to what's the benefit of having organically produced seed to use in an organic system?
If I were trying to answer this as a seed, if I were selling crop seed, it's like,
Hmm.
well, you've got this seed that's been produced in a system that's going to be much more closely related to the system you're doing, right? A
Hmm.
seed that's grown in a conventional setting is going to have helps in the form of conventional pesticides
Hmm.
or other things, fertilizers that aren't available to the organic grower. And so there's an element of selection that goes into genetic selection that goes into producing a seed in a certified organic system that can only lend itself to the strength of that seed as it stays in that system. It's also just supporting your industry,
Yes,
uh,
truly,
you know,
truly
because
so.
those a lot of those seeds are grown. So I was privileged to live in Southern Oregon for a
Hmm.
long time, and there aren't a lot of people there, but there are a lot of farmers, people trying to make a living as small producers, much like I'm sure many of the CNG growers and many of our clients are.
Hmm.
And what I learned there is that growing seed for these seed companies was a big way that they were able to do that. We had the climate,
Hmm.
it was dry, long seasons, good isolation distances. And so a lot of these seeds, high mowing, Johnny's, and all, like you already mentioned them, and many of these other, either whether they're regional seed companies or national seed companies, they contract with small farmers to grow out small amounts, or not small amounts, to grow out small amounts of seed into large seed for them for sale through their catalogs.
Hmm.
So you are helping your small farmer neighbor or virtual neighbor, whatever, another small farmer when you buy USDA certified organic seed from some
Yeah.
of these companies. And that's a good question to ask your seed house and say, we were talking about earlier, what have you got that's resistant to this, that, or the other disease or pest? Well, where were these seeds produced?
Hmm.
That may play into, you can't produce all kinds of seeds everywhere, but that may play into your choice in going for something. If you've got a tomato that's grown, let's say you're in North Carolina, and tomato seed produced in a climate similar to yours, it's going to have potentially have an adaptation that's going to be an advantage for you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot there. Could be a whole other podcast just on seed, which we'll aim to have. But so let's we're in the thick of it right now in July. But let's transport ourselves to, maybe December January, we're starting to kind of really hone in on what the next season is going to go like. What are some things you should start just thinking about at the beginning of the year as far as planning out your crop plan and thinking about pests and disease?
Yeah, crop planning is farm specific, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have your market that's going to dictate what you're growing. You're going to know the size of your areas. But as it pertains to pest and disease, resistant selections are always good.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest advice I can give is, I fall victim to this myself, is flipping through the seed catalog. Oh, I'd love to grow that. I'd love to grow that. I'd love to grow that. Not, I need to grow this. Not, this is an important thing for me to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I have that luxury because I'm not a full-time farmer. But
Mm-hmm.
the it's thinking about, okay, what are we growing and why? Who are we growing it for? Is it going to yield well? Does it have the potential to yield well? How many successions are we doing? So you're coming up with your crop plan, and yeah, you want to just make selections that are going to set you up for success.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that's from a pest and disease standpoint. If you don't know what you need to be resistant to, what you need to have an advantage against, um, then you're kind of subject to whatever may come
Mm-hmm.
once you're out in the field. I think that's a mistake that probably everyone has made, is I want to grow this heirloom, and that heirloom might be perfectly suited for where you are, or it might be perfectly suited for the Midwest, or it might be
Mm-hmm.
perfectly suited for the West Coast. So understanding the sort of lineage of that seed,
Mm-hmm.
does it make sense where you're aiming to grow it in the way you're aiming to grow it? So
Mm-hmm.
that's the biggest thing, is appropriate genetic selection
Mm-hmm.
for what you're doing on your farm. And then understanding, you have to understand which pests and diseases are likely to occur in each crop on your farm.
Mm-hmm.
And that should help guide your selection. Now there are ways, it's not that you can't grow something, it's just that be prepared to try to now foster it through that season,
Mm-hmm.
uh, given whatever's likely to occur.
Yeah. So if you're like a new farmer or in year one, and you're like Elena was saying, I think before we started talking, was like you're just farming in a new field and you're just realizing for the first time there's all these new pests and disease. When you're in those early years, how can you start kind of taking, like, where could you look even before you started to find information about what pest and disease might occur? Um, and then what should you be looking for in those first, like, say, year 1 through 3?
Yeah, two things come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And Elena, happy to hear if you have anything else, but regional production guides.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in New York State, you're going to look at the Cornell production guides, because they're going to outline all of what we call the key pests and diseases.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones to be concerned with. There could always be outliers and things that come out of nowhere, but you can't plan for everything. So you plan for the key pests. Um, so if you're in North Carolina, NC State has great resources. There's a Mid-Atlantic guide, there's Southeast regional guides. Every
Mm-hmm.
region of the country has production guides that are put out by the land-grant universities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then even better than that are other farmers who
Mm-hmm.
have been doing it longer than you. So if I were trying to get started now, let's say I wanted to go into production in Floyd County, Virginia, um, and let's imagine that there's a market for all this produce that I'm going to grow, and I have a good business plan, and I'm going to go visit Cat. I'm going to go
Mm-hmm.
visit Riverstone. I'm going to go visit JP over in Blacksburg, and all
Mm-hmm.
these other regional farms that have been here for a while. Say, hey, I'm looking to start a farm. I'd like to grow these things. How do you feel about the market for them? How do you feel about um, what should I be concerned with? What's our biggest challenge going to be
Mm-hmm.
in producing these? Is it a pest? Is it a disease? Is it something else? Is it a short season, right? When should I be planting? And like, fortunately, people, growers tend to be very forthcoming with these things because they want other people to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's where you start. This is one thing that, coming out of that perennial fruit world, like I mentioned earlier, we had growers associations that functioned differently than anything I've seen, at least in the small vegetable scene. You know, you go up to
Hmm.
Vermont, they have a really strong growers association. And when you're more isolated, or when you're smaller scale, or when what you're doing doesn't fit the regional model, it's
Hmm.
hard. So you have to find resources um, that allow for that exchange of information, that allow for that sharing of experience. But that's really it. Is you can read production guides all day long, but
Hmm.
they're oftentimes quite long, extensive, and they try to cover all the bases for you. But it's the other people in your area who are successfully doing what you're aiming to do. That's
Hmm.
where the most valuable experience lies. And then, yeah, what should I be on the lookout for? What are the biggest challenges? What were your failures? You
Hmm.
know, and hopefully, buy them a beer or something, and
At the
bring them a
very
pizza,
least.
whatever it takes to learn. That's a pretty, modest investment
Hmm.
compared to a crop failure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Elena, you
Yeah.
were saying you've had your farm, now you're starting from year one. Like, how has that experience been?
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting because I think too, I feel like I don't have the most common experiences. I've gotten really lucky. Like
Hmm.
my pest and disease pressure has been pretty low at both locations. Like I
Hmm.
definitely have some for sure. Japanese beetles, there's like
Hmm.
4 million of them right now.
Hmm.
But I luckily haven't had too many issues with it, but it is starting from scratch because like Floyd is 10 degrees colder. Like
Hmm.
all of my knowledge of like, okay, when do I seed start, when do I put this in, when do I harvest for this, completely out the window. I have to redo it, plus with changing global climate and temperatures and everything like that, it's always changing. But
Yeah.
I got really lucky. I live in Garden City, which is in Roanoke, but just up the road, one of my close friends, Hannah, she's been growing for years here, so she's been
Hmm.
an incredible resource for like any and all questions I have because we literally live in the same like mini climate over here. Um, and it's also great because I think like similar to what Daniel was saying, like they're some of your best resources is like the people that are growing near you. And her and I, like we share resources. So like we have a tiller that we share irrigation. And so like by meeting her and talking to her just about like, oh, like what pests have you had? Or like, are you dealing with the same thing? We've also kind of expanded that to like more of community farming, which I feel like CNG is definitely like that, like peer farming, peer review, sharing. Um, so that's been really incredible. I think also just to go back a tiny bit, I was thinking about the planning portion of
Hmm.
growing. One of the things that going into the first farm that I was a part of, we focused mainly on annuals. So
Hmm.
like annual flowers, which comes with its own hardships and benefits. But I think this time around, I'm focusing a lot more on having at least like my goal is 50% to be
Hmm.
perennial. And I think that creates a lot of resistance to disease and pests because those are typically hardier plants that are able
Hmm.
to go through seasons and still and like improve each season even. And so I think that's another thing is considering what you're growing and if you're able to incorporate perennials into your mix, because I think that also creates a lot of, it lowers the workload a little bit because
Hmm.
you're not having to plant every year. But it also, I feel like some of the healthiest plants I have out there right now are my perennials. And so
Hmm.
that's been incredible to see and like definitely makes me want to do even more of them. But
Yeah. Okay. I think we should move into the like scouting and diagnosis part of the conversation because I think this time of year, everyone's so busy, making assumptions, of course, that everyone's operating on the same seasonal schedule as us in the Southeast. But I think, generally most farmers across North America are in a little bit of the higher tide. People in the deep South might be on a break. But regardless of what time of year, farmers are very busy. And I don't know very many farmers that have like a diligent weekly scouting schedule where every Monday at 8 a.m. they go out and they do their scouting. It's usually more like they're in the middle of harvest and they're like, huh, look at what
Yeah.
is going on here. So can you talk about, yeah, there's paint the picture of what an ideal scouting practice would look like and then maybe water that down to more realistic.
Sure.
And then to the point of when you see a problem, where do we go from there?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it all needs to be appropriate to scale.
Hmm.
So you, you you can't realistically. The ideal is you're walking all the time and you're looking at and you're inspecting everything with all of your free time. Well, what's the
Hmm.
problem with that? If you don't have free time, you're not doing it, right? And that's kind of the crux of what you're saying
Hmm.
is where's that time coming from? The ideal is you have fewer crops or a simpler system, and you've got your harvest schedules worked out so that you create space or time to be able to monitor the health of your crops.
Hmm.
Um, if you know which pests and diseases you're likely to expect, you're going to be more ready to notice them when they appear.
Hmm.
Um, if you know what those pests and diseases look like when they're likely to emerge, you're going to be primed for catching them as they occur, rather than once they've made a big impact on your crop. So ideally, you're walking with a hand lens and a notepad at least once a week through everything.
Hmm.
Um, I'll say that I used to do this. I used to keep traps out. So for certain pests, you can actually use traps. Um, well, for most pests, you can use traps, and there are even disease traps now where they're doing little spore counts. That requires collaboration with people who can look under microscopes, et cetera, or maybe you have a microscope. But if you can set out traps, whether they're passive like sticky traps or whether they're baited like pheromone traps,
Hmm.
that can help you understand, okay, populations are low, great, or populations are starting to rise. But
Hmm.
once a week you want to be checking those traps. So traps are part of scouting.
Hmm.
Otherwise, if let's say take potatoes, and everyone knows Colorado potato beetle, they're likely to come. You know what they look like, so you're walking through and you're just looking in the potatoes. Do I see any of those larvae? Do I see any damage? So damage is often noticed before the pest itself.
Okay.
Um, so that's really it. Is the thing that I would emphasize is taking notes. I walked these blocks or these crops on this day, and I didn't see anything. I walked these crops on this day, and I did see something. What did I see? I saw leafhoppers, or I saw aphids, or I saw whatever it is, beetles, flea beetles. So that's a big part of it. And then, of course, having had a plan in place for what are you going to do about it.
Hmm.
Not coming up with the plan right now, but
Yeah.
oh, I know that every year we get flea beetles in our brassicas. So what's our strategy for dealing with them?
Hmm.
Or I know that those Colorado potato beetles come, or the squash bugs come, or whatever it is. Um, so that said, I mean, in my history, I used to spend a lot of time scouting, driving from ranch to ranch, walking lots of blocks, looking for all kinds of things. And even with all that scouting, I was rarely the person to first encounter a pest or disease. Usually
Hmm.
it was someone who was doing the work of training or pruning or something like that who would say, "Hey, what's this?" They may
Hmm.
not even know what it is, but having your whole team
Hmm.
with an eye toward abnormality,
Hmm.
with an eye towards something atypical. Hey, this plant doesn't look right.
Hmm.
Oh, right? Because whether you're whoever has their hands on the plants the most needs to have a mindset of looking for things that seem out of place. And that
Hmm.
is a huge key to success. And that's how we've caught many, many disease outbreaks or pest outbreaks early stage, because the people who were in the plants were the ones who would raise the alarm.
Hmm.
So that goes back to that experience thing. They may not know what it is, but they knew that it didn't look right. And they also knew, hey, I need to tell someone about this.
Yeah.
That's a huge key to success right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been, and my like journey of farming has been one of the coolest things, that how quickly you get to know your plants and you're just like, oh, okay, that is what a sick plant looks like. And
Mm-hmm.
also cool to see, I mean, cool in a just a nature way, but um sick plants usually have more pests and disease than healthy plants. And it's so easy just to quickly see like yellowing leaves, like something's happening. Um, I've thrown my dear mother under the bus once before in this podcast, but I feel like she's got a little home garden and she'll call me and say like, I'm seeing like the radishes didn't grow. What happened? And there's so many reasons why it's hard to narrow it down. And I want to make sure, Elena, if you have some thoughts on this too. But yeah, I kind of trying to put myself in that first year mindset. I'm also in a position of starting a garden kind of first year. And there are some things where I'm just like, I've never seen that before, or that I've seen that happen once before, and I'm still really not sure what it even is. Where are some resources to reach out to ask for help? Other farmers or extension agents or folks like yourselves.
For Daniel, yeah.
Yeah.
Give Daniel a call, send him a picture.
We do get pictures, but we're not a diagnostic lab.
Yeah.
It depends. If you can get a good, clear picture, I mean, sure, we're going to take a look at it for you. But that's the biggest thing is like good, clear documentation of what it is in context, not just like a close up of a leaf with like a little green smudge on it. That's really difficult. But having a relationship with your extension folks is really key. That was key for my success when I was farming, is just knowing who to go to. Hey, we're seeing this. What are my options? Hey, we're seeing this. What should I do about it? What's the standard, response to this thing? Oh, there is no standard response. Okay, so I'm not alone. At least I know that. But extension that's totally their job, and they can point you to resources within the university. So whether it's a pathology lab or an entomology lab for diagnosing, once you know what the problem is, then it's easier to go about doing something about it, because you can't use a pest or disease control without knowing what the target is. That's part of the law for using these things. Having there's a pest or a disease on the label that you can use this product on these plants for these reasons.
Yeah. Elena, do you have anything to add on the kind of mindset of scouting, or just what to do when you're in the thick of it and feeling overwhelmed?
I don't know if my advice is good. I also have a sweet mother that grows a small amount of things, and my advice to her is always just like grow more of them in case something happens to one, then you have backup. I don't know. I think that honestly, that's part of kind of how I think about it as well, is like growing enough that like some loss is going to be like, it's going to happen. So kind of having that in your mind while you're planning, I think also is important. But I was going to say in relation to like talking to us, like Daniel, right? Like Daniel helps me if I have an issue. Like I had some, I think it was downy mildew, right, on some crops or something like that. But I often hear like in the office, like folks will call in. The more information that they have about what is going on helps us do our job better and give much more effective recommendations on what can be done. So like the scouting, the note taking, all of that, like that provides so much more information for Daniel to go off of and give a confident recommendation on what can help treat or mitigate it in the future. And so I think that like note taking is so important, just like always having a notebook in the back of your pocket. Just because you're always going to forget it. Like I know I've been in the field and been like, oh yeah, I needed to like remember that I planted this here and it like didn't do well last year or whatever. And you think you're going to remember, you don't. And so the more you can write down and reference back to, it helps in future planning, as well as like figuring out like, oh, maybe that's why like this disease is carried over in this bed for multiple years and I like forgot about it, whatever. I think, like note taking is really important. It seems simple, but it really helps you down the road.
Yeah. I love a tip from Broad Fork Farm, but they recommended like just emailing yourself like farm note, and then it's just all saved in one spot and they can look at it when they have more time.
My notes app, my notes app has so many random things of just like fourth plant looks weird, this bug yesterday, and I'm like, what did I write? But it's still like it helps. It helps.
Yeah.
It helps. One thing I'll say too, just in terms of diagnosing, is like not everything you see not every insect you see in a plant is a problem.
Yeah.
But if your reaction is, oh, there's bugs in my plants, kill
Mm-hmm.
them, right? Or they're hurting, like, we will every year we get calls about there are some ants.
Yeah.
Some ants are in my whatever cucumbers. It's like,
Yeah.
well, are the ants there causing a problem? Are they an indicator of something else? But ants aren't a pest of cucumbers.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to understand, like Elena was saying, is like get the context, get as much information as you can before reacting. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of my main takeaways from this conversation and other conversations with, folks we meet at conferences is like there's so much pressure on, it feels like there's a lot of pressure on farmers, just like there's like endless information to try to carry to farm successfully. And in reality, there's just no way. I mean, obviously, if you farm for 40 years, you're going to know some things, but there are just like all these people that exist to help you to like who have a deeper
yeah.
understanding of all these things that you but like yeah, it comes down to you observing and taking the notes and being able to communicate. But it's not, you shouldn't carry the weight of like needing to have like a PhD in entomology to run a vegetable farm. Um,
I Just to
Go ahead.
piggyback on that exact
Yeah.
sentiment. I was talking with Paul. He's a seed. He works for High Mowing, and
Mm-hmm.
I see him at every conference, and we've become friends. And he said something along the lines of what you're just saying, in the context of being at a conference together, and is just like, everyone kind of wants to be an expert,
Mm-hmm.
and he's found really good success at just being an expert in the things he's supposed to be an expert in, and
Mm-hmm.
not anything else. So when people call him and want to talk about things that are outside the realm of seed selection, he's like, well, there are other experts for that. Let me help you find them. Let me
Mm-hmm.
point you to other resources. But the farmer, I think you're right, does there's this bar set of like, need to be the expert in all the things, but it's really just make sure you're an expert in your business
Mm-hmm.
and in what you're doing and why you're doing it, and know that there, like you're saying, there are people to help with these secondary things, to
Yeah,
help guide
absolutely. Okay, we're closing up on time, but I wanna just yeah, if you were, I don't know, I'm gonna really reach outside of my lived experience, but like maybe you're a farmer suffering in the middle of July and one of your crops is just like decimated. This is happening to me current. It did happen with my potatoes, but what do you do in that case, or what's like the triage? Just if something's really going downhill fast, you don't have time to spray, you don't have time. You're obviously going to take notes and not try to have it happen next year, but what's the best case scenario of what you could do in that moment?
try to learn from it,
Mm-hmm.
um, understand why it happened,
Mm-hmm.
look for the pattern. Did this happen last year too, or
Mm-hmm.
is this an anomaly? Does this happen every year and I forget it because I didn't take notes?
Mm-hmm.
um, Try to figure out why it happened, and take from that so that you can build on that experience. um, yeah, sometimes you mow crops down.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are crop failures. You want to be careful if it's a disease, that you don't leave, necessarily something that's going to come back and haunt you the next year. If
Mm-hmm.
some diseases can overwinter, some pests can overwinter on that very same block of soil, and that goes back to understanding the life cycle of the pest or disease. So you gotta understand what it was, and then
Mm-hmm.
there are university fact sheets on all of these pests and diseases that will tell you
Mm-hmm.
the life cycle. Okay, there's 3 generations a year. It overwinters and comes in every year, or it overwinters right there. And so how you handle it is going to depend a little bit on understanding the life cycle.
Yeah. Is there, I guess, yeah, this is obviously based on learning more about the disease, but is there, on a kind of a layman's level terms, is there a good argument for if you see something that you like, I don't know what that disease is, it definitely looks the disease and not pest. Um, is it a good idea to like burn it or to like take it out and put it somewhere else?
Oftentimes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, burning depends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you may not need to, putting things in bags and like carrying them away, or it could just be as simple as like you flame it, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know how you might want to go about it, but the thing to be careful of is spreading it. When you go to turn that crop in or whatever, the main thing to be careful of is just spreading it to other areas or perpetuating it in that spot.
Okay.
And so I'm hesitant to say like, yeah, you should pull it out and burn it, because that could be a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
But if you're walking, Elena and I were talking about this yesterday, is roguing plants. Is if you're walking a row of plants, and you see, okay, I've got 20 plants in this row or 200, and 3 of them look bad. They look kind of weird. Pull them out. I mean, that you can pull them out and just get rid of them, put them in the compost or bury them or whatever. Something that doesn't take too much time. I mean, it's a viable strategy.
Yeah.
Sure. I think Elena had success with that. We diagnosed some downy mildew in her cucurbits. I probably told her some complicated thing to do, and she just went and pulled them out.
Yeah, you literally, you did say multiple things of like how I could treat for it, and I was just like, it's like literally 2 or 3 plants. I was like, I'm just gonna cut them out and hope that it didn't spread. And guess what? It didn't. And that's also a very lucky instance of it, right? Like if you're growing hundreds of feet of something, that might not be as viable, but for the scale that I have, it worked. But yeah, like I think too, it's like the observation and catching it early. The earlier you can catch it, the higher chance you have of actually being able to like mitigate it somehow. But
Yeah. And I guess when the topic that is your bread and butter that we haven't gotten to yet is product selection. Because if you were trying to like save every plant on the farm, and you were really relying on products, it could get pretty expensive pretty fast. So what is your kind of just thought on how to assess, get the right fertility, get the right treatment, and kind of set yourself up for success that way?
I'll try to answer this as quickly as possible. It's like, you know, getting soil reports the same time every year so you can track progress, with the same lab, preferably, so you can, because not all types of soil analysis are the same. So the numbers from one lab don't necessarily equal the numbers from a different lab because they're using a different type of analysis. So using the same lab year after year, getting recommendations from the lab gives you what you need to understand how to fertilize, right? And so you're going to fertilize based on understanding. And we can help you with that. We can help you with the math. We can help you with product selection. That's exactly what we exist for. So you set your plants up with good fertility. Hopefully they're growing strong. Specific pest and disease management is disease. Again, it's all about knowing what you're likely to encounter. Disease management is essentially preventative. Pest management, you can be a little more reactive. But knowing which specific pests and diseases you're encountering or likely to encounter is really key to both of those things. So let's just take disease. Okay, I'm growing cucurbits and downy mildew is likely. So I'm going to look through the Seven Springs chart or catalog or through my university research guides or my university production guides and say, okay, what are the things allowable for use in organic production to prevent downy mildew in cucurbits? Okay, I've got my list. I'm going to now look at the price per acre, make a decision. Maybe I want 2 on hand, but you're going to want to have those kind of things on hand. If you're putting in a huge investment in this crop. Now, if it's just a couple of rows, okay, and you're willing to risk it, maybe you don't need to have something on hand. But if you're going for production, you're going to want to protect that investment even by having something on hand. So maybe you're going to have a biological, like a bacillus, and then maybe a copper, and you're going to alternate those, or you're going to use them ahead of when you anticipate the disease to show up. And there are weather models that can predict, or you can, if you're in a network of growers and you're in touch with people, you say, downy mildew is coming up from the south. Okay, you're in North Carolina. Maybe you have some growers in South Carolina and Georgia. We're starting to see downy mildew. Maybe that's a good time for you to start preventatively treating in a high value crop that you're really trying to protect, right? Otherwise, you could, if it's just like Elena said, I have just a few of these. Well, when it starts to show up, now I'm going to take action. With insects, it's different because insecticides that are used in organic production don't last very long. They're not very persistent. And so preventative insecticide use isn't really how it works with these products. You're treating an insect that's present. So disease you're preventing, you're colonizing the plant with good bacteria or good fungi, or you are creating an inhospitable environment so that those diseases don't take root and get established. And if you read in our catalog under the various, so we have these great charts in our catalog that are the result of answering this question every year for the last 8 years. It's like, what do I use for this? So we've put that with based on university work, we've put those into some simple charts that are on our website or in our catalog. And so yeah, with the insects though, it's I'm seeing this, I need to treat it.
Yeah.
What do I use? It's going to depend on the insect. It's going to depend on the crop. It's going to depend on the time, and also the value of it to you. So understanding the value of your crops is really important, and then yeah, acting accordingly. Does that answer your question?
That does very well. And can you talk just for like if someone's listening to this and they're really new to growing? I think I'm putting myself in the mindset of someone who might just be responding kind of reactively to certain things. What is the best like time of day to apply certain pesticides and things?
Yeah, you want to be careful not to apply things in the heat of the day for a couple reasons. You don't want to be applying things when it's so windy that they get blown off target. So with organic pest and disease controls, coverage is very important. Uniform, adequate coverage of the plant surface that's of concern. So if they're eating leaves, if they're eating fruits, you want to get uniform, thorough coverage, so sufficient volume. Oftentimes early in the morning or in the evening when it's not too breezy is a good time to spray.
Yeah.
If it's hot out, what can happen is that a lot of it may evaporate on its way, so you lose concentration, you lose coverage through that. Or if it's breezy, a lot of it might get blown off target.
Yeah. And then it's like applying, do you need to be applying after rain and things like that?
Right. So yeah, rain can certainly, it depends on, so different products work differently. In the realm of approved for organic products, nothing is really going into the plant and moving throughout the plant. Nutrients do that, but pest and disease controls do not. So they're going to be on the surface, and they may be colonizing that surface, or they may be just kind of adhering to that surface. And so if they're meant to be sort of a layer on the surface of a leaf, let's say, and then all of a sudden you get a bunch of rain, well, that may wash it off. There are things you can use to help it stick, but yeah, ideally you spray when the leaves are dry, or there's not a ton of dew. Like, so early morning can be difficult, in our climate at this time of year, because the leaves might stay wet until 10 o'clock even. So then evening becomes your best opportunity. But if you're expecting a thunder shower, so yeah, you have to put the things out there so that they have an opportunity to do what they're going to do, and that takes an understanding of how they function, which is what we try to outline in our catalog descriptions, in our website descriptions. But also, you can call us and we'll talk to you about how these things work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we're nearing the end of our conversation, and we've given a lot of we've honed in on like the new farmer advice, but is there any kind of last minute thoughts or some summarizing thoughts on folks that are starting out or in their first few years and are really struggling with pest and disease, kind of where to begin and what mindset to take on?
Pay attention, patterns, watch for patterns, take notes so that you can see what happened last year. When did it happen? Talk to other growers. I mean, we've kind of covered a lot of those bases already, but yeah, it really takes being deliberate about, at least being intentional, if not being really deliberate about having control over what you can control, and then also knowing what you can't control.
Yeah.
And it also ties really closely into understanding the value of your crops. I remember talking to a good friend and a grower in Maryland, and he was wringing his hands over using a very expensive organic insecticide called
Mm-hmm.
Entrust
Mm-hmm.
on an acre of onions for
Mm-hmm.
the thrips that had shown up. I think it was thrips, it was leaf miners or something like that. And I said to him, well, how big is the planting? He said, I think it's 2 acres, an acre.
Mm-hmm.
Said, okay, well, you're talking about this product. I can't remember what the cost per acre is. Let's say it was $90 an
Mm-hmm.
acre. And what's the value of that crop? $40,000. Okay. So perspective matters, but
Mm-hmm.
it could easily be the reverse. So you have
Yeah.
to understand the value of that crop to your farm, to your operation, whether it's important for you to have a market or whether, like we were talking about earlier, you could just mow it down and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Then it's not worth throwing money at a losing battle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've certainly seen that done. If you're about to harvest in a week,
Yeah.
have you got what you need, or can you? Does the benefit justify the cost? These are business decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I mean, time is money and bed space is money. But there definitely is some some space for variety trialing. This year I've put a little less pressure on selling most of my produce and I'm growing a small plot, but I have been trying just a lot of different varieties and it's been interesting to see just like from plant to plant, even if they're just four
Yeah,
feet away, there's a huge difference just because of the variety. And then taking notes on that and being like, okay, that one's out for next year. But this one did surprisingly well, even side by side.
absolutely. I mean, we had
Hmm.
that having various varieties is a good diagnostic tool too,
Hmm.
because if you know these varieties of pepper are resistant to anthracnose and these aren't, and all of a sudden these weird spots start showing up on your fruit.
Hmm.
Oh, okay. I mean, we had that scenario earlier this year with a grower. He's like, going to what Alena said earlier, it's like the more information we can get, the better. He was saying to me, okay, I'm seeing these spots, I'm seeing this weird thing on my pepper fruits. This may have been last year.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm not seeing it in this one adjacent row. It's like, oh, that's bizarre.
Hmm.
Or is it? Is it just something simple like disease resistant peppers?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Elena, we were saying we're kind of wrapping up, and while we have gone over some like advice for farmers and beginning farmers, what's your kind of summarizing advice on how to just navigate the world of pest disease?
I'm trying to think because I mean, I definitely have advice for like starting out is just simplifying.
Hmm.
Like, I think a lot of growers want to do all the things, all
Hmm.
of the different avenues of how to sell their stuff, every variety, everything, especially all the weird ones that you think are cool that might not sell. So I think like simplifying that allows you to have more time to do the things that we're talking about, where
Hmm.
you're actually able to find time to look at your crops, to make sure that you're scouting all of that. I think honestly that it's like create systems that allow for you to be more efficient in your time management so that you
Hmm.
can find things when they're just starting to appear so that you actually can work on that issue.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I think that's my main one because I'm not the more technical like Daniel. But I think that it's just the foresight and the planning that goes into each season will help set you up to be able to deal with those issues when they do arise.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's been the through line through this whole conversation is just good planning, simplification, building systems. It's like the healthier the farm atmosphere and the business, the healthier the plants. It all is symbiotic. Cool. All right. Well, thank you both so much for your time.
Yeah.
And I know you sent a lot of resources that we'll definitely link in the show notes, but if you have any more or other thoughts, I'll also put your contact information in the show notes as well so people can reach out. But I'll
Great.
see you in the conference room.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right.
That was awesome. I love talking to the folks at Seven Springs. Huge thank you again to Elena and Daniel for sharing so much of their own experience to help us tackle this monster of a topic. We felt like the conversation could have gone on for 3 more hours because this subject matter is just so varied, but it really boils down to the fact that all pest and disease pressure is super specific to your farm. And I want to reemphasize that you really don't need to have all the answers, but if you can just make really good observations, take notes, there are a ton of folks out there who do have the expertise to help set you on the path to success. So if you're farming or gardening under C&G or USDA organic standards or just value natural farm inputs, I highly recommend you checking out Seven Spring Farm Supply's catalog at sevenspringsfarm.com. That's with the number 7. While they do ship across North America, keep an eye out for cooperative bulk ordering opportunities to save on shipping costs. This can happen if you're able to order collectively as a community of growers to have your shipment shipped to one central location. We'd also like to send a huge thank you to Jeremy Varon for writing our new theme music, and keep your ears open for more Field Note episodes to come. We really want this podcast to continue to be a resource for folks, so don't hesitate to reach out if there's a host or a topic you'd like to hear more about. We're excited to keep building this library of farmer-to-farmer knowledge sharing. So if you'd like to listen more, head over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube to catch up on past episodes, and stay tuned for more conversations to come. As always, if you're interested in learning more about certified naturally grown or certifying your farm, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly with any questions at erin@naturallygrown.org. That's ERIN@naturallygrown.org. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch up with you next time on C&G Field Notes.